the Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, and we are here to make you aware about all the common symptoms and what you should and you should not do in cervical cancer. Let me explain what we mean by cervical cancer. So, cervical cancer is basically the cancer of the mouth of the uterus. This is the uterus, which is the organ, where the lady carries the baby, and it's a tubular organ like this, and it has got a mouth that we call the cervix. So the opening from which the uterus opens here into the birth canal where the baby comes out, this mouth is called the cervix. Now the changes in this cervix start in various ways. There are abnormal cells which start over here, and these cells first, it can be dysplasia, it can be just due to infections, because having infections from coming out from the vagina or from the lower part are very common among ladies, and then gradually these infections could result in cancer. So let me explain to you more carefully what happens, what are the symptoms. So these cervical cancer symptoms often come in older women, not younger women. In the early stage, there may be no symptoms, and in the late stages, there are symptoms where there is vaginal bleeding. So typically, you may have women who have stopped their period. So at 45 to 50 age, they have achieved menopause and they have stopped the period. And even after stopping the period, after about 5 years, there was no period, and suddenly they notice some bleeding. So that's very typical in women who have achieved menopause. Then very commonly bleeding after sexual intercourse. There may be some bleeding in between the period. So your period is usually, say, a particular date of the month, and there is a gap of about a month, but in between there may be some bleeding. If you have had a checkup from a doctor who has checked your internal organs, female organs, and suddenly that's what we call a pelvic exam, and there may be some bleeding after that. So there may be also pain when you pass urine, and there may be some pain after having sexual intercourse. So all these things will indicate that there is some problem in the cervical area, or the area of the mouth of the uterus, as we call it. Now, if you do experience any of these symptoms, you must have yourself checked up. There are some other symptoms of advanced disease, like if the cancer has spread beyond the mouth of the cervix, then you may end up with some leg swelling, some backache. Uh, so these are symptoms of advanced disease. Now, coming to what is the risk factor for cervical cancer, or what is the causative organism. So right now we are very, very tuned with viruses. Thanks to the coronavirus, for the last 1 year, we have spent a lot of time trying to understand what is a virus. So similarly, the culprit responsible for causing cervical cancer is the human papilloma virus. So this is also a virus which is given the name of human papilloma virus. And this is the main virus which causes cervical cancer. So, what are the, who are the people of the women who are commonly affected with this? Women who are smokers, they definitely have a higher risk of developing cervical cancer. As I said, it's more about the older women. So, if you are above the age of 30, and typically more so after 45 to 50 is when the cervical cancer changes would be seen. Very commonly, those who are exposed to many sexual partners. So, having different multiple sexual partners, because this human papilloma virus is actually transmitted from the penis of the male counterpart. So, the males bear this virus on the penis, and from there it is transmitted to the female. So, those who have had many different sexual partners, or who have had intercourse with different males, or started their sexual activity early, or if they have had other sexually transmitted diseases that they have acquired because of this sexual activity. So all this increases the risk of cancer. So this is something very important to bear in mind. Then if they have been taking any medication, that is birth control pills or OC pills, or as the Mala D tablet that we call, this is also one of the risk factors. Other infections, having HIV and other infections, makes that area prone to HPV infection, that is human papilloma virus, and can result in cancer. Having multiple sexual partners, as I explained, that the virus comes from the male side to the female, and so that is the most important factor. And so one of the ways to prevent this is to use a condom, because if the male partner uses a condom, even if he is carrying the virus, it will not get transmitted to the female part. So this is also a very, very important point to understand. So the sexual behavior has got a very important role in this cervical cancer formation. Now, which are the tests that one should be doing to check whether you have this cervical cancer or not? So you must have heard this terminology. It is called pap smear or pap test. This test is done to check if the cells of the cervix are showing any changes. And how do we do this test? The woman is made to lie back with her feet in stirrups. The doctor will insert a speculum into the vagina. Through this speculum, he will look at the wall and the mouth of the uterus, which is called the cervix. And then using this small little brush or a little stick, they will take the cells from the mouth of the cervix and they'll put it on this dish or a slide. And that slide, there's a fixative agent, and it goes for checking. So there are two types of tests. One is human papilloma virus test and a simple pap smear test. So in the simple pap smear test, just the cells are looked at to see if they are showing any changes. And when you do a human papilloma virus test, that is, just as you have heard, we are doing a RT-PCR for the virus, COVID virus, to be picked up from the nose and the mouth of the patient. So the same way we are doing this human papilloma virus test using the PCR method to see if the virus specifically is present or not. We have Dr. Anjali Patil here, and we would like to have a discussion to explain these things more in detail. Dr. Anjali Patil is a cancer surgeon, and she's been doing many cervical cancer surgeries. She does the surgeries using the open technique before, and now the laparoscopic technique also. So there are some parts about this I would like her to explain to you more in detail. So Dr. Anjali, sometimes the patient undergoes just a pelvic exam, not a pap smear. And what is the difference between the pelvic exam and a pap smear as far as the patients are concerned?
So when you go in for a pelvic examination, the doctor is only doing a per vaginal examination, seeing what is the size of the uterus, what are there any other lumps felt, or how the vagina looks and how the cervix looks. But when you do a pap smear, you specifically take a smear, a slide from a scraping from the cervix, that is the mouth of the uterus, and that the cells contained in that are examined under a microscope. So you get to know whether there is a cancer or not in that.
So what we mean by this is the doctor may have just checked you up with her hands or just looked at the cervix. That would be a pelvic exam. But if she takes a small swab by which she takes out cells and puts it on a slide and sends it for testing, that would become a pap smear. Now, very important is when and how should these pap smears be done? What age do you recommend that pap smear should be done for women?
So you can start at the age of 21 years for women. You do a cervical cancer screening, and between 21 to 29 years, you do a pap test every 3 years. And between 30 to 65 years, you do a pap test every 3 years. Plus, or you can do a HPV test every 5 years. After the age of 65 years, there is no need to get screened if the previous PAPs are normal.
So the main important age, as you're saying, is 30 to 65 years old. When the woman is having her periods, the periods are irregular, and then at about 45, she will stop her period. And so from then on till about the age of 65. So this is the main age when we have to really be very, very careful about the women and advise them to go for regular health checkups and get this pap test as well as an HPV test done. Now, of course, vaccine is the hot topic. We have both, as doctors, received our COVID vaccine, and we are very happy that we have received it. And hopefully, we can go back to a normal life where we don't have to wear a mask and we don't have to distance ourselves so much. So, similarly, this vaccine exists for HPV, that is the human papilloma virus, which is the causative agent as far as cervical cancer is concerned. So, please tell us something more about this vaccine.
So the HPV vaccine basically protects against certain types of human papilloma virus strains. So there are certain strains which are more commonly found in patients who are having cervical cancers, especially strain 16 and 80. And so you have two types of vaccines that are, one is a bivalent vaccine and one is a quadrivalent vaccine. So the vaccination has to be started as early as 9 years of age, and if possible at 9 years of age, or you can start it even a little later if you have not taken it at the age of 9 years. Males too need to get vaccinated because it protects it also protects males from sexually transmitted diseases like warts.
So a vaccine, as we understand, is a small injection of that germ containing the germ, which is actually a dead germ. So the germ will not produce the infection in us, but it will stimulate our immunity to produce antibodies. So if we are to face that germ, that is the human papilloma virus, later on in life, we can fight it easily. And when we are able to fight that human papilloma virus germ, then that germ will not produce that cancer in our bodies. That's the meaning of this vaccination. Now, suppose we did get vaccinated, or there is quite a lot of our population who didn't get vaccinated. So when we go to a doctor for a checkup, how would the doctor be able to pick up these changes in our body that we are getting cervical cancer changes?
So when the doctor examines the cervix, the doctor examines the cervix both by manually, that is what we call as the per vaginal examination, and also does a visual inspection of the cervix. So on that, on both these examinations, the doctor might find something abnormal, like either the cervix is harder than normal, or it is a ballooned up in shape, or there is an ulcer, that is a kind of a wound on the surface of the cervix. If she cannot see anything but still suspects something, she might look at it with a special instrument known as a colposcope, in which she gets a more magnified image. And if she sees either a growth, which might be an ulcerative growth, that is, we call it as an exophytic growth, or it might be just an ulcer, which is a surface ulcer, which might be an early lesion. So whatever it is, she will go in, apart from a pap test, she will go in for a cervical biopsy. So
now that brings us to the next question. When you do a biopsy or take a small piece from the cervix, the patient gets diagnosed with cancer. But at the time of the diagnosis, we need to know which stage the patient is. Is it an early stage disease or has it advanced further? So what are the different stages of cervical cancer that you see in your patients?
The stages, see, a lot of patients will be asymptomatic. Many patients might not have any symptoms of cervical cancers, and even on examination, you might not see anything per se. So when you don't see anything by visual examination, but when you do a colposcopy, you see a lesion that may be about up to 5 millimeters. So up to 3 millimeter or up to 5 millimeters. This we call as stage 1A1 and 1A2. So this is a very, very early stage in which, in fact, if the woman is a very young woman, she could also go in for a fertility sparing surgery. Once you can see the cervix, once you can see any kind of a lesion on the cervix, then it is more than a 1A lesion. So but if it is confined to the cervix, we still call it an early lesion that is confined to the cervix. So it would be a 1B lesion. Once it is spread a little away from the cervix, so if it is either involving the vagina or the region around the uterus and the cervix, that is, we call that as the parametrium, then it would be the stage 2. And then if it is even further, it has spread to the lower 1/3 of the vagina, or it has spread to other organs and to the pelvic wall, then it will go into the stage 3. Apart from that, very advanced stages, then the patient will not be operable also, so it has become a stage 4, or it might even be totally inoperable, that is a metastatic cancer.
So the reason why we are trying to spread this awareness, make people aware about the symptoms, what is the reason you get this disease, how can you prevent yourself from getting this disease, is so that patients know the symptoms and they can go to the doctor early and come in early stages where the treatment can be simple and the patients can still be cured even if it's a cancer. And unfortunately, our patients are not aware of these symptoms, so they always present late, and the cure and their quality of life becomes very difficult. So these are all the treatment options that are available for cervical cancer. There's a whole big list mentioned over here. As we said, it depends on what stage the patient has come, where there are so many different options that we could use for them.
So when we look at so many options available, we decide about what option is to be used for which patient depends on, one, the stage of the disease. So in very early stages, only then the first 3 options, that is cryosurgery, laser surgery, or conization. These are the 3 options that you would be using. And plus you would also be using it in very early and very young patients who want to preserve their fertility. But if once the patient is a little not in an early stage, then you cannot use these upper options, and then patient would have to undergo a much more advanced surgery known as a radical hysterectomy, in which apart from the uterus, the cervix, and the and a part of the vagina, as well as the ovaries and the lymph nodes, all these areas are all clear and blocked. But this is a very major operation. Previously, we used to do the radical hysterectomy laparoscopically. Now we do not do it laparoscopically, but we are doing certain, in the early stages, sometimes we are doing certain lymph node dissections or some kind of diagnostic staging. We are doing laparoscopically. Otherwise, for radical hysterectomy, now we are not doing it laparoscopically anymore. Further case, if the patient is still more advanced, the patient goes in for radiation therapy and chemotherapy. In cervical cancer, we are doing both radiation and chemotherapy, both of them which go on simultaneously. We do have even advanced treatments available today known as targeted therapy and immunotherapy. So these are many options are available. One thing is for sure, that compared to the previous era, we have got many more options available. Patients are being diagnosed much earlier. So we are giving much better cure rates for patients than we used to give them previously.
So that's the question that is always there at the back of the mind of every patient. Can they really be cured from cancer, whether it is any kind of cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, cervical cancer? And what hope can we give these patients as far as a cure is concerned?
So like for very early stages, we can definitely give patients cures, especially if they are very 1A, 1A, 1B cases. We are giving them very good results with our treatments. And as I have already explained about the radical hysterectomy, these are extensive surgeries. Though these surgeries are extensive, today we are doing them very well, and patients can lead a very good quality of life later on. Yes, at a later stages when we are doing radiation and chemotherapy, also the patient gets a very good response rate, and they have a relatively normal lifestyle. They can go on with their sexual activities. About 50% or so also, if we are doing a fertility sparing surgery, about 50-59% of patients also do conceive, though they do have sometimes some problems related to their pregnancies. But yes, they do have a lot of hope happening today.
So once the cancer has spread to the other parts of the body, the hope for cure is very less. And that's why we always ask our patients to come as early as possible. As soon as they notice the smallest of symptom, they should come to their doctors and get themselves checked up. So there are some myths and myths versus facts that we want to be clarify for our viewers today. most patients feel that cervical cancer can't be treated. This was definitely a myth, because this was a neglected problem and patients used to come in very much advanced stage. We have seen such bad cases where the cancer has spread from the uterus to the urinary bladder in front, and the rectum, or the area you pass the stools behind. And because it was advanced, it couldn't be treated. What is your experience in treating cervical cancer patients?
See, though we say that the early stages we can give very good treatment, it is also true that even if the cancer has spread either to the bladder, that is the urinary bladder where you pass the urine, or it has spread to the rectum, but even then it is localized to the pelvis, we still can give cure, which would you would be saying, okay, when I said that it's very difficult to give cure, yeah, in late stages, but it is really possible. Almost, if these patients go in for surgery, we could get at least 20% of patients would get 20 to 50% of patients who could get cured with surgery. But these are very extensive surgeries. We call them as pelvic exentration surgeries, which previously we used to do by open surgery, which resulted in a very, very big cut. Today we are doing these pelvic exentration surgeries even by laparoscopy or by robotics, and which gives the patient a much better quality of life. Apart from that, for all these symptoms at later stages, we do have a lot of palliative measures. So patient has a good quality of life. Even if she does not get a cure, she still lives a very good quality of life.
The other myth is that HPV infection is not common. Now, of course, for something to become common or known, it has to get a lot of media coverage, just like our COVID-19 has got for the last 1 year. It's became a pandemic, so it is absolutely world famous. Everybody knows about that virus. And human papilloma virus, maybe people are not aware about so much, so they think that it is uncommon.
So HPV infection is common, but what is required for a cervical cancer is a persistent HPV infection. So that is what we are detecting with an HPV pap smear. So HPV pap detects a persistent HPV infection. And though HPV infections are very common, it's not that everybody who has a HPV infection does get cervical cancer. It is if you have a persistent infection, and a long-standing infection is when you get a cervical cancer. It goes in stages. First, it leads to some kind of an inflammation, then it leads to dysplasia, and then when it grows into a even more high-grade dysplasia, only then does it turn into cancer. So it's a very slow stage, slow process happening, and that's why detecting it early is quite possible.
So going back to where cervical cancer cases, which we used to see a lot in the olden days, especially in the rural population, one of the reasons would be because the hygiene was not good. Women were not wearing good quality sanitary pads. They would just wear some cloth which was washed and not disposed. So since the hygiene quality has now improved, even in smaller towns and villages, people are wearing sanitary pads which they dispose. That's one of the reasons that this human papilloma virus infection has definitely reduced, we would say, in among, especially now that we are seeing less cases in our practice, and especially so in the cities of Mumbai, Pune, where we practice, isn't it?
Yes, apart from that, also the use of barrier contraceptives, that is the use of condom, has also helped a lot in reducing the incidence of HPV infections, because the transmission of sexually transmitted diseases reduces with the use of a condom.
Another myth that people have is that older women don't need pap smears, or they don't need any tests. Older women, especially in our society, women are very shy to come out with their problems, and women of that generation are even more shy, I would say. So if there are younger women here watching this show on Facebook, maybe more younger women are active and they would be watching us. Please carry this message back, I would say, to all the older women you have at home, your mothers, mother-in-laws, grandmothers, that it's not that they don't need pap smears.
Yes, definitely. All women of who are, especially after the age of 25, have to undergo their regular pap smears. Yes, after the age of 65, only if their previous pap smears have been negative, only then you need not undergo a pap smear. But otherwise, all women do have to undergo regular pap smear testing.
Smoking is not linked to cervical cancer, another myth. In fact, smoking causes so many different cancers. But as doctors, when we tell patients that you should not be smoking, it's not good for your health. I don't know how many people really listen to us.
Well, that goes without being, that really has to be taken care of. Smoking cessation is extremely important. We are seeing a lot more cases of cancers in patients who are smoking. Not only cervical cancers, we are seeing many breast cancer patients too.
So going back to, what are the changes that we can bring about by which the cervical cancer can be prevented? Let's summarize so that each one of you understands what is it that you need to do? What are the do's and don'ts? So HPV vaccine, if you're going to take the HPV vaccine, at what age and how do we take it?
So you can start the vaccination, you can start as early as 9 years. Usually we are starting it at the age of 11 years, 11, 12 years. And even up to the age of 26 years, we are giving it. Apart from that, apart from your HPV vaccination, which protects you against those types of viruses which would lead to cervical cancers, which the HPV, your vaccine would protect you against. It doesn't take care of all strains of HPV virus. There may be some strains that may not be there in the vaccine, but these are much rarer, and the percentages are just 3 to 5%. So those maybe would not be taken care of by the vaccine. But the majority of the HPV infections which cause cervical cancers are taken care of by the vaccine. Important is lifestyle changes. Lifestyle changes means hygienic use of sanitary pads, the hygienic way of sexual contact, seeing to it that you prevent sexually transmitted diseases, use of condoms, regular exercise, nutritious diet, and avoiding weight gain. Obesity per se is not good for any kind of cancers. And of course, lifestyle changes does include not smoking, and having only a few sexual partners is also important.
Yes, so all the importance of healthy lifestyle, Dr. Anjali has definitely highlighted upon. Some of the factors specifically mentioned here, which should be incorporated in our diet. What would you suggest?
You should have a balanced diet, basically. Healthy foods would include enough, sufficient quantity of green vegetables, fruits. Apart from that, the proteins and carbohydrates and starch, but sufficient vitamins should be there in your diet too.
So we are coming to the end of this talk. If there are any questions, we would be happy to answer. Please understand the important message that we are giving here. One is that the vaccination process starts at a very young age, almost at the age of 11, 12, as far as young girls are concerned, just as they have attained their puberty when they are still in school. So they must follow that schedule. Sexual hygiene is very important. Having not too many multiple partners, using a condom, and having a good hygiene of the vaginal area. Human papilloma virus is the main culprit over here. And of course, a healthy lifestyle, good diet, and smoking.
Getting screened regularly, doing your pap smears very regularly. Plus, if you have any symptoms, suspected symptoms like vaginal discharge, irregular vaginal bleeding, or you have foul smelling discharge from the vagina, pain, or loss of weight, all these are symptoms of cervical cancers. You should have to show the doctor as early as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reshma and Dr. Anjali. There are a couple of questions in the chat box which I would like to read it out here. The first question is pap smear enough to diagnose cervical cancer? Hello? Dr. Reshma?
तुमचा ऍक्च्युली पीपीटी आहे जर तुम्हाला दाखवायचं असेल डाउनलोड करून ठेवा. हॅलो हा yeah, so how do we who say we again go live on the same thing?
Ma'am, you're already live. There are a couple of questions that are there in the chat box.
Are there some questions for us?
Yes, ma'am. There is one question. There are two questions actually. Am I audible to you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, there are two questions. The first question is pap smear enough to diagnose
Hello.
cervical cancer? Hello, ma'am. Am I audible to you?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Can I say the question again?
Oh, sure.
Hello.
Yes, tell me.
Yeah, the first question is pap smear enough to diagnose cervical cancer?
Only pap smear is not sufficient. Sometimes the pap smear may be negative, but you are still suspecting cervical cancers. Then you have to go ahead and do cervical biopsy despite a negative pap smear. So only pap smear is not sufficient. And even if pap smear is positive, we still have to go ahead and do a proper biopsy of the cervix if you have a lesion to diagnose the cervical cancers. Just a pap smear is not sufficient per se.
So pap smear would give an indication or a suspicion to the doctor that there are some abnormal cells, but to confirm it, they will have to do the cervical biopsy.
Yes, we also need to know what kind of cervical cancer it is, which cannot be diagnosed on the pap smear. So it might be, there are two main types of cervical cancers. Now, one is the squamous cell carcinoma, which is a very common form of cervical cancer, and the other is an adenocarcinoma. So to know what, apart from that, there are many other different types of cervical cancers also. But to diagnose which exact kind it is, we need to do a cervical biopsy. So a pap smear will not give you an idea as to which kind of cancer it is. And the treatment of the cancer would change as per the type of cervical cancer it is. So a biopsy is mandatory.
Okay, ma'am. There is one more question. Is frequent infection the cause of cervical cancer?
Frequent, that is persistent or frequent human papilloma virus infection, which is the cause of cervical cancers. So yes, a frequent infection is a cause of cervical cancers.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. These are the couple of questions which are there, and more questions can be posted on our Facebook page and YouTube as well. And you can see the questions over there and answer them over there only in the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Reshma and Dr. Ranjali, for being here with us. Regards from Panesha Biotech, and thank you so much for giving us your valuable time today and spreading awareness about cervical cancer in the Cervical Cancer Awareness Month.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.